time, you talk about a lot of things that led you to where you were, and you get an idea of who the persons that are around you, more one-on-one. And he was real open about, things he was going through, what he wanted to be, and his whole dream was to get his life together, and have a good job, and be able to take care of his daughter as well as his family.
He wants a fresh start, and he wanted to do better, and he happens to run into you, and this is a beautiful home.
The Floyd that I knew in this house was a good person. And if he did do something bad, he hid it from us. He didn't do it around us. If he did it out there, he did it out there. That's his business. It's not mine.
Addiction is hard.
Yes.
It's full stop hard.
Right.
But family is different. It's a different part of them, and so the struggles that they're maybe facing out on the street is just not something that they ever want to bring to their doormat,
And that was Floyd. I mean, if he did have addiction out there, he left it in the streets. He never brought it home.
Sometimes the urge to get something stronger to kill the pain, took over, but he always fought against that.
He was talking to me. He said, T. He said, I do whatever the police tells me to do. He said, because they looking to kill a big brother like me.
Yeah.
He said that out of his own words. He said, because a big end like me, he said, they looking to kill a big brother like me. And sure enough, that's what happened.
It was kind of eerie when it happened.
Weeks and stuff later, it happened. Yep, that was one of his
That's interesting though, because what you're saying is that, so that night he did whatever he was supposed to, whatever they told him to do, because he knew
He
that
knew
night
that they was
fine
intimidated by
and
him
that.
because he was so big.
And I'm sure that officer probably know who it is that ran his lights, in the computer.
But what about, do you think that if he had complied, because I'm sure you guys have seen the full tape by now, right?
Mhm.
And he must be thinking, woulda, coulda, shoulda, if he had that mentality going into it, let me just do what they're saying, and, because it's just such an escalation when you see the full tape of, yeah, he's not, maybe because he's not feeling too good, but yeah, and then he's like, put me on the ground, when he says, put me on the ground. Never look at it and go, man, I wish that time he had taken his own advice and just been like, okay guys, take me wherever you want to take it. Do you think that a lot of people maybe came out of the woodwork because there was an opportunity, to grandstand, to be on stage, to, a lot of money got thrown around, which is part of what I'm exploring in this documentary. I mean, Black Lives Matter Global Network came out and said we raised $90 million plus dollars. They did this with his face. Just his face, or saying you had some association with him could have gotten, garnered a lot a lot of people.
That's why mine has no nicotine.
Do you think that people took advantage of him?
It's like they use it as what you say, a way of funding whatever they
Hello. What's everyone doing?
Then
It's
sometimes
better.
I went to the George Floyd Memorial.
It tastes good.
It was
Tastes
different
like fruit.
individuals going on there and saying donations.
It's weird to be on here without a filter on my face. Usually I have a funny filter over my face.
You got a little metal box, and I don't know who you are. Where is this going?
I'm watching, it's called The Greatest Lie Ever Told. So,
To be president,
I'm from Florida.
vice president.
Where are you from,
and
Hunter?
For them to show their concern to our family, and for them to actually give an ear to our concerns and how we
No,
feel
both
on the
stop
situation.
I like to vape. I vape. Everybody picks their poison.
I ain't never met a sister. I ain't never met a brother. None of them ever came here.
LA. I'm in
We've been
Florida.
in this house for almost 6 years, man.
Looking for them 4 years, He just
They never wanted his stuff. I mean, I would think that if my
They didn't even
son,
come and look to see where the man lived at. They never came to see where Floyd lived. They never came to
Hello.
get none of his stuff. Nothing.
That was my oldest brother. I love him.
I'm good. How are
I'm
you?
never gonna get my brother back.
I don't
I
ever
would
go
like to
live on
just
here.
say one day
I'm watching
that
TV,
this
but I'm just
needs to
chilling.
start because it's like
What
that's
y'all
an
doing?
extension of him.
Where are you at?
And I just
Mike
be
Hill,
proud
is
to
it
just see
Michael?
one time.
Michael?
We found out
Michael?
that more.
I feel like your
Well,
name
they
is
found out that
Michael.
That wasn't true.
without the E in it. Michael.
Three kids came down, yes.
This one.
Because
I think they
my
did a
goal
DNA
is
check,
different.
and the boy's not in.
Uh-oh, somebody said something they weren't supposed to.
Rumors, I don't know.
That's what I'll leave that to Maury. I don't do that.
Oh. No, we don't have that one.
That's Maury's cat. That's what we do here.
That was a good one, that was a good one.
You guys, thank you so much. It was what a pleasure to sit here and talk to you guys. It was just absolutely amazing.
Y'all be saying some raunchy shit on here, don't y'all? I've never been live on here where I'm not like sitting in front of a computer already, like listening to music, you know? So, this is me. The 6'6" man in the blue uniform was later identified.
You imagine how absolutely traumatized that child was.
Sweet.
And then you think to
I usually go
yourself,
live on TikTok
just a few
all the
years
time.
later,
because there's
and,
so many funny
you'll have
filters you
children
can use on
that
there.
are
So.
wearing his shirt.
Hello, New
referring
York
to him as a
City.
hero,
Hi.
as a
I'm in
savior,
Florida.
right?
Who's everybody voting for? I'm voting
That's
for
wrong.
Trump. What about
It's
you?
not right at all.
Are you
And
gonna vote for Trump?
it was this
Or are you gonna
case
vote for
that I
Camel
couldn't stay
Harris?
quiet on, and I had to make that video.
In 1998, he
Just
spent
wondering.
10 months in prison
have to answer
for
if you don't want
theft
to.
with a firearm. In 2002, he spent 8 months in prison for a cocaine offense. In 2004, just 2 years later, he spent another 10 months in prison for a cocaine offense. By the way, I am not saying that if you have a record, you don't deserve a second chance. I do draw the line when it comes to second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, and ninth chances.
Two things can be true at once. You can both say that George Floyd didn't deserve to die, no matter how you believe he died. Nobody deserves to die, in my opinion. And you can also say that objectively,
My favorite
This
hobbies
person
are
that
singing,
did die
karaoke,
was not a saint.
and cooking.
this person was not an angel. Okay, so my producer just sent me a link and a minute mark for George Floyd's 2019 arrest, which I haven't seen, so I'm about to watch it for the first time.
I can agree with that. I can agree with that. But one is significantly better than the other, you must say. They're both
Okay,
kind of,
this is super interesting
Eh.
because
but
he's
one is
saying mama
and
again.
the other one is
And obviously,
Yeah.
I know that throughout the trial, his girlfriend testified that he calls her mama, and the media made such a big deal saying that when he died, he cried out for his mama, and they clearly misinterpreted that because this is a 2019 arrest. He's once again saying, "I want mama." So that seems pretty clear that he's talking about his girlfriend, and he's not crying out for his mother, which was a nice victim narrative.
You and Floyd, Mr. Floyd, excuse me, I'm assuming like most couples had pet names for each other.
Yeah.
And what were you saved in his phone as?
Mama.
What's crazy in the retrospect is to realize that everybody reacted.
I don't have child
Nobody knew
support.
who George Floyd was.
I receive it
But
though.
also,
Only $71
nobody
a
knew
month.
who Derek Chauvin was.
That's it. Oh, I'm a clown. Why am I a clown, Ellie? I make you sick. I'm sorry. If you don't like it, you can swipe away. God gave you these things called phalanges, which are fingers. And if you press it to the screen and move upward, you'll have disappear and I won't be there no more. It'll be somebody else.
And my heart
Just
breaks
so
for her,
you
honestly,
know.
like hearing, like she's obviously just
But I mean, if you want to
devastated,
stay and just
but
feel sick
she's
all day,
being
that's
told by
fine
his
too.
lawyer to say
I mean,
absolutely
ain't nobody
nothing. So
pressuring
she's
you,
not gonna
okay?
come on camera, she's not gonna participate. He's not
Hello,
gonna come on camera
Jersey.
participate because they have
Hi.
a pending appeal. And
Welcome
my
in.
frustration and what I expressed to her is I'm just like,
I mean, I guess
so your strategy
Ellie's
for the appeal is the same thing
Ellie's
that your
Glam
strategy
Life 101.
during the entire trial.
She's-
Silence. Allow
she's
the media to
glammy.
tell the story.
That's
That
what it
I
is.
said to her, I literally
Is
said,
it because I have no makeup on?
this might
Is that
be the
what it
only
is?
opportunity
That's
that
gotta be
you
what
guys
it is,
have,
isn't it?
right? You've already lost.
Maybe
at
it's
one point
because
in
I'm a
time.
big
So
girl.
how
Is
is
it
going
because
to
I'm a
hurt
big
you?
girl?
He's lost, right? How's it going
What
to hurt
is it?
you to
I
allow
can't
his
tell.
voice
You
to
ain't
be
said
heard
nothing
and
back.
to tell the story from his side?
Okay, figured. Cat
Nothing.
has her
Like,
tongue.
The lawyer's running the show now, and to be honest, I think it's the worst strategy. There's just no way he's gonna win in the court of public opinion by saying nothing, you know, like, super frustrating, like, that's a dead end, so. I can't imagine
I
raising
love
up a
Candace
child and loving a
Owens.
child and knowing who he is and watching the media in virtually minutes be
I'm just
able to
wondering, yeah.
strip that person of their identity and to create a new identity for them. I felt her pain. I did. I felt her pain, and I felt that the only thing we could offer to do was to expand on who Derek Chauvin actually was. People were
You wanna see something
taking a
crazy?
picture, not even a picture, a still from a video, and saying, Satan, this is your Satan. People were taking a storyline that was given to them from the media and saying, here it is, George Floyd, he's your hero. That's it, that's the story, the end. It's insane.
You look at all these girls.
You know Derek Chauvin.
I love Candace
I do.
Owens.
I
She's
was a
great.
Minneapolis police officer for 31 years.
Is it the same Derek Chauvin that the media has introduced the world to?
Not at all.
No, you won't.
Derek is
What's crazy is my hair's naturally
quiet,
blonde. If you look at my roots,
somewhat quirky,
you
not a
see
big
my
guy.
blonde ass roots.
very dependable.
And I
Show
did
up
this
every
black and
day.
red look
Derek is the kind of guy that you
like
want to
a
show
month
up
ago,
on your calls
right at a
with.
month ago,
He's very level-headed.
and it's all
Derek,
growed
when I
out.
first supervised Derek, I was a sergeant.
really long
and I was
hair.
running a unit for Homeland Security.
And I
Derek got
curl it.
assigned onto my unit, and at the time, he was living with his mom, which I thought was admirable, that he wanted to help take care of his mom.
Derek is a quiet, thoughtful, honorable, and selfless man. He has a
I
big
have really,
heart,
really long hair.
and he always
just
has
washed it
put
2
others
days ago.
before his own.
I'm from Florida.
He
Born and
was
raised.
kind of a guy that was a little more of a loner. You know, some probably would have considered him socially awkward.
I felt
You
like there was
described
something
him
on
as
my
quirky,
chest.
and somebody else kind of described him in that same way. What do you mean by that?
Kind of quiet, introverted. Sometimes he wears his uniform pants a little high on his boots. Just that way. You know,
Maybe not the quarterback of the football team.
not the quarterback of the football team.
Okay. Did he ever have any issues with other police officers? Was there ever any signs that he was particularly violent or had issues with people because of their skin color?
No, never. No, that is not the Derek I knew. And I don't believe what people are saying. It's made up. It's not true.
When you sentence my son, you will also be sentencing me. Plus the fact that when he is released, his father and I most likely will not be here.
Where is Derek today?
Derek is at Oak Park Heights Prison. He sits in a cell for 24 hours a day. He does not have any reading materials, no TV, no computer, no nothing. He just sits in the cell. And that's it. You sit and look at the four walls in your cell every single day.
What was your initial reaction when you saw that video in terms of looking up and seeing, hey, that's Derek Chauvin, I know that guy?
He's somebody that would be hard to read for most people, but a nice guy.
So when you looked up at his face, you didn't see a monster, you just saw Derek looking as Derek has always looked, and the media perhaps reading into it.
They read into something that was not there. That is not the Derek that I knew. All of our department was painted with that same brush, which is unfair, and it's a lot of false narrative, because we have a good department.
And we heard earlier that he is spending 23 hours a day in solitary confinement. Did you ever think about his mental state?
Every day. Every day.
You don't wish that on anybody. There's an incredible amount of stress in the job alone. More or less, if somebody dies in your custody, that's about the worst thing that you can go through as a person and a police officer.
George Floyd was a semi-regular customer. He'd come around not so often, but he was someone we'd recognize. And he'd come here maybe to pay his phone bill or get phone services. So anytime a customer brings a counterfeit bill, and you see we have plenty of them, we tell them, hey, this is counterfeit. If the customer insists, then we call the police, and then the police has to ask them where they got it from. That really has ever happened. In my experience here, whenever we tell a customer that the bill is counterfeit, they immediately leave because they don't want to be involved with it. Just from our experience, yeah, there's some good ones, but a lot of times we know right away that they're fake just because of the way they
They
have
feel the color.
disfiguration.
And there's a marker you can write on them. They
So,
tell you.
Usually we don't call the police on counterfeit money because when we tell the customer that it's fake, they accept the fact and just leave. When he came in the store, he was with a friend of his. The friend of his was paying for some electronics repair, and all of the money he had was counterfeit. Because we knew the person, we told him, hey, we're not going to call the police, just take this money back and don't bring it back here again. And then a few minutes later, George Floyd made a purchase in the tobacco shop with a counterfeit bill, and the employee then called the police. They arrived about 45 minutes later and found George Floyd in his car, and that's when they approached him.
Man, come on, let me see your other hand.
I'm sorry.
Dr. Ron Martinelli, forensic criminologist and certified medical investigator and police practices expert.
Hello.
And let me just preface this, I have no dog in the fight here, all right? We classically
crazy today.
get a lot
I don't
of
know why.
officer-involved shootings
My
and
hair
in
looks really
custody
bad
deaths, but
today.
we take them
And it's
from
clean.
all sides.
I don't understand
So
it.
my advocacy is for facts and evidence, not for people or entities. So if the officers are doing what they're supposed to be doing as they were trained to do
Good.
it, I'm
Where are
gonna
you?
tell
Where you live?
If they're
Where are you
not,
from?
I'm also gonna tell you that.
What was your
I
assessment
feel weird
of
because
the police
usually when I
behavior
live
in
stream, I
seeing
live
the
stream
full
on
video
TikTok,
and
and
seeing how
TikTok has
things
all
played
those
out?
cool little
And that
features.
contact
So
with
like
Mr. Floyd, and
when I
that
stream
is
on
totally
here, I'm
appropriate
like
because
no
they're
makeup, no
investigating
filter,
a third
nothing.
person's
And I just I don't
report
know.
of criminality.
It's different. Still getting used to it. I'm trying though. I'm trying to put myself out there more. Instead of just being on TikTok. I try. Hard not to though. I'd be like super self-conscious.
So for the
Like my own
officers,
worst
what they
enemy.
have to do is they have to begin an investigation to ask him probative questions.
Well, follow me. I post a lot of
seeking
funny
more
shit,
evidence
so.
to determine whether a crime has occurred.
All right, what's your name? George.
And I do it just for fun, so.
Individuals in there. Yeah.
So once they put the
I'm from Florida.
handcuffs on Mr.
Yes,
Floyd,
sir.
Mr.
Right here
Floyd
in the
should
good
have
old
known,
state of
albeit he's
Florida.
under the influence of drugs,
Where are you from?
If you act real already.
that he must obey the officer's directions, orders, and commands. He cannot resist arrest.
I hear you, but you're gonna face the door right now. Listen up, stop.
Uh-oh, that's what's up. I've never been there. I hear it's pretty though.
And so when
I've been to
Mr.
Miami,
Floyd
I've
gets in
been
the
to
car
Key
and
West,
he
I've
claims
been
that
to
he's
Ocala,
claustrophobic,
Right.
been to
Claustrophobic
Jacksonville,
is exactly what he said.
but mostly Mexico Beach. I lived in Mexico Beach right before Hurricane Michael hit, and then moved right
You showed up in a
after.
car. You wouldn't get in a car if you thought you were claustrophobic. The officers
Kinda
placed him in a
lost
position
my
that's
job.
referred to as the maximum restraint
Hurricane
position.
kind of
In other
swept
words,
it
he's
away.
prone, stomach down on the ground.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, good morning. We plan to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that Mr. Sharman was anything other than innocent on May 25th.
It's life.
2020.
You know they
Mr.
say life
Derek
don't give you
Sharman
nothing you can't handle,
used
so
excessive
that's
and
okay.
unreasonable force upon the body of Mr. George Floyd until the very breath, no, ladies and gentlemen, until the very life were squeezed out of him.
I'm watching Candace Owens' review on the George Floyd case, so that's what's playing in the background.
Chief, that from the perspective of Miss Frazier's camera, it appears that Officer Chauvin's is on the neck of Mr. Floyd.
Yeah.
Yes.
Would you agree that the perspective of Officer King's body camera, it appears that Officer Chauvin's knee was more on Mr. Floyd's shoulder blade?
Yes.
They
Have
had to
exactly
the
an
jury
hour. I love
believe
Candace
that
Owens
it
too.
was a neck restraint. It was
Candace
the knee
Owens
on the
is
neck,
the
it was
greatest. I
asphyxiation that
don't care what it
killed
says.
George Floyd.
I don't agree with everything
However,
she says,
there
but
was a
99% of it I do.
evidence
So,
that George Floyd consumed a toxic, lethal cocktail of fentanyl and methamphetamine.
Did it appear that Mr. Floyd said, "I ate too many drugs"?
Yes, it did. Let's put it in perspective. 3 grains of fentanyl on the head of a lead pencil, enough to kill you, enough to kill me. And so they had to continuously
yes, she does.
inculcate
She gets everybody.
the public to believe that Derek Chauvin intentionally, premeditatedly murdered George Floyd,
And he did not.
and drugs had absolutely nothing to do with it. As Lindsay and the toxicologist presented that awful testimony.
Do you recall describing the level of fentanyl as a fatal level of fentanyl?
I recall describing it in other circumstances, it would be a fatal level, yes, in other circumstances. Had Mr. Floyd been home alone in his locked residence with no evidence of trauma, and the only autopsy finding was that fentanyl level, then yes, I would certify his death as due to fentanyl toxicity.
I am 34. I'm old.
I know I can't breathe.
I'm old.
I can't breathe. Take a seat. Come on up.
The autopsy is generally broken down by, number one, how the body is presented, and height and weight is, and then it goes through neurological system, exterior trauma, interior trauma, but I go right to the cardiovascular system. And there I look at the heart.
Yes,
weight.
I have a 10-year-old
How
boy.
much does the heart weigh? And then I take a look
Uh-oh.
for key
Birthday
words.
right
I
around the
compare
corner.
heart weight to
28,
the
29, 20
height and
days.
weight of the individual. To what the
Sometimes they'd be like, how old are you? I'm like,
and I look for certain
30
words or evidence
ish.
of something called
Up a little
cardiomegaly.
higher, yeah.
Cardiomegaly means an enlarged heart.
For a
If
while there,
person
people would ask me
has
how old I was, and I was
cardiomegaly,
saying 30 for
their
so long that I
chances
just kept
of
saying
sudden
30.
cardiac arrest
And they're like, I just asked you this
rise
last
by
year and you said 30. I'm like, yeah, I
150
turned 30 every year.
150%. 150
Ain't age past 30.
That is significant. And then we have the whole issue of the police encounter and the basal metabolic rate rising. Think about him being agitated, chaotic, excited, and his heart is pumping, pumping, pumping. There is zero empirical forensic evidence, medical evidence of any biological mechanism,
It's
physiological
common.
mechanism that would have interfered with George Floyd's ability to
Uh-oh.
get sufficient oxygenated
I forget
blood
my age all the
up
time.
into
It's
the
okay.
brain.
That's normal.
There's
Comes
zero
with
evidence
age.
of that.
There
Comes
was
with age.
another passenger in the vehicle, and that passenger was Mr. Floyd's drug dealer. However, he did not end up providing helpful testimony because of his own criminal liability.
Okay, why would you not answer those?
I'm fear for criminal charges going forward. I have open charges that's not settled yet of my personal stuff.
So basically, you are invoking your Fifth Amendment right against compelled self-incrimination?
Yes, sir.
People say that I look older online than I do in person. And I'm like, okay. I'm like young spirited, I guess you would say.
Of chewed up pills that were found on the floor of the police car. It's very unclear to me why that evidence was not obtained earlier and presented to the jury. But I think if the jury had seen their picture, not only of Mr. Floyd's drug dependency, his multiple prior brushes with law enforcement,
My hair's driving me nuts.
his physical characteristics at the time of the incident and his ultimate death. Absent the interaction with the police, he could easily have died with the amount of drugs in his system with no knee on his neck or on his shoulder. And so to me, that would have suggested, if I were on that jury, reasonable doubt, but our system is such that a jury gets to decide that. Now, there were other factors, I think, that polluted the jury's ultimate ruling. Ultimately, the jury
reach a conclusion.
The verdict is the right verdict, which is good job of women.
Oh, I forgot to show you all these. Look what else I got today.
Make sure that they know that we mean business.
I want to see the charge of the arresting officer take place.
Look how pretty.
We are not
It's
talking about a
It's like a pinky
split-second
lavender.
decision
So
that was
cool.
made incorrectly. I can't see coming to a different answer there. Thank you.
Real quickly, have you seen the body camera footage yourself?
No, I have not yet.
The verdict is
And it
in
turns on.
the case that has riveted the nation, the trial
Isn't it
of Derek
pretty?
Chauvin. The former Minneapolis police
I love
officer
it.
was found guilty today of killing George Floyd last May.
I just want to thank the prosecutors. I just want to thank God, the DNA, everybody.
Yeah.
Amen.
My hair, I have big ass hair.
And I hope every killer cop is
Normally,
watching
I would
and paying
take another hair
attention,
tie
because today,
and
the
put it
Black
around
Lives Matter
it.
movement served notice on you.
And pin it up like this. But I can take it, twist it around it.
There's a viciousness, there's almost a bloodthirst when one of these cases
I
comes
love her
around.
hair.
And nobody
Really
looks back, nobody
thick
asks
hair.
any questions, nobody says sorry.
Thick, long hair.
It's just, you are being sacrificed so we can build this temple of Black Lives Matter. And there are so many individuals who deserve to have their story told. So Liz, I want to
Oh, I
start with
quit
you.
smoking
So,
cigarettes
being an anchor
10,
and
15
having
years
that
ago.
position, how did you juggle
But
being as well to a police officer in terms of covering stories?
I
Well, I went
started
to our
vaping,
management right away before I even went on a date
like,
with Bob, as a matter of fact, to tell them that I was
10 years ago,
thinking
maybe,
about going
right
on a
at
date
it.
with this
Almost
person
10
at the
years.
time, and I said ethically I don't feel comfortable covering police union issues, and that was something that.
Well, I mean, I'm happily married, so I mean,
was-
what you
was
look like
totally
is
fine
kind of
with.
irrelevant.
So you mentioned that you were getting
Just saying.
threats on
I'll be right
Twitter,
back.
and I'm assuming that's where you
Enjoy my
Can you talk a little
silly.
about what those threats were?
I think they started immediately within, I think, hours of the actual incident. They said that Bob Kroll and Liz Collin will be dead by the time the year ends. They came to the station where I worked and held a protest during the 6 o'clock news demanding that I be fired for being married to a police officer. I'm seeing this story from so many different lenses. As a wife, as a journalist, but as a mom, I think it's where it hit me the hardest. The early days, I'm calling friends, hey, can you take Anthony? We have another death threat, or my parents are watching him for a few days. He doesn't know what's going on. I mean, you can't even explain this stuff to adults, nonetheless a 7-year-old child. And he happened to see a little clip of the news in the early days and said, wait a minute, so the police made a mistake and they're stealing stuff from Target? In his little mind, he knew that this did not make sense. This isn't okay. So this was a Black Lives Matter organized protest. 100 people were there, and we were out of town. After that happened, I sent an email to our newsroom, and I said, this seems newsworthy. There was a state rep candidate there that was beating me in effigy. They made piñatas of Bob and I dressed as Klansmen.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Slow down here. You're telling me that they made piñatas of you in effigy and they beat them?
With bats.
John Thompson did with a stick.
In our driveway. This is the man running to be a state representative in Minnesota.
In your driveway?
Overwhelmingly elected.
Bro, if anybody who support his racist ass. Bob Pro, I said it.
I mean, it was horrendous, absolutely awful. And I got in trouble for pitching that as a story. We had reporters tweeting their alliance with Black Lives Matter using that hashtag after this movement, talking about it's okay to align yourself with this group and supporting Black Lives Matter. And that was fine. But I was no longer wanted there, and that was pretty clear.
What was the process of making these? I mean, if you've ever been so angry you wanted to make a piñata, that's where I'm at. Just f up. Just absolutely f up. That's where I'm at.
So when did you make the decision to leave?
My contract was up in January of this last year, and I've been blackballed in the market.
If I can interject, it just, they were successful in destroying her career because she had a wonderful career trajectory going. She's a small town, Worthington, Minnesota local. She was a local favorite. She was the primary fill-in for the two main anchors. She had a weekend anchor. The ratings that they had were huge. Everybody loved her. And then all of a sudden, this twist. So I watched it destroy her and destroy her career, something that she's very good at and a lot better, quite frankly, than some of her competitors or her replacements.
My name is Fraser Ross, and I own retail stores in Los Angeles, California.
During the George Floyd protests that swept the nation, what happened?
We were looted for over $400,000 worth of merchandise.
Wow.
It was a disaster.
You then went online, and what did you observe that you thought was out of the ordinary?
Chrissy Teigen had posted on her Instagram, I'll help the protesters get out of jail. Then she said, well, let me up it to another 100,000. Now, when you have approximately 30 million followers at the time, you can start a movement and people say, oh, well, she's going to bail me out and everything. And then, you've got celebrities like Jennifer Garner giving 4 hearts to that post. Well, they all live in gated communities and it's not their stuff being destroyed.
And you had just been looted.
Yeah, I went online and posted an Instagram of the store being looted, and I tagged, thanks, Chrissy. She wrote under this post, well, like anyone's really shopped there for 10 years.
So her instinct after seeing that your store had been actually looted, her response is, well, no one shops at your store anyway. So she was not sympathetic to the victim in this circumstance.
Not one bit. But Jen Atkins was actually worse.
Jen Atkins, she's a friend of Chrissy Teigen. You've tagged her in this post because you sell her products. She comments on this post as well.
Right.
Basically saying, use the shampoo to clean up the graffiti.
And my looting cream comes out in October.
So they're having fun.
They're mocking the looting. Right. You should be in federal prison if you're inciting violence with that many people following you.
So Dana decides to jump in and call you and Kitson a racist store because you were upset that your store was looted.
Yeah.
This made you a racist.
Right.
So this was quite literally blaming the victim. Then what happened?
She sends a DM saying, well, before we get on the phone, you're going to have to apologize to Chrissy Teigen, and then I'll take down the post.
Dana Omari from her Instagram account wrote exactly this. You need to make a formal public apology for blaming a woman of color, she's referring to Chrissy Teigen, for your store being looted. And Chrissy needs to be named. In this apology, you should mention it was insensitive to place the blame on a single person and that the true cause of the riots is the mishandling of police brutality toward George Floyd and the Black community as a whole. You should also say that while you are devastated by the looting of your store, you recognize it comes from a place of privilege to be concerned about replaceable items when others are protesting for their rights to live. If you apologize, I will happily remove all posts concerning your store. How does that sound? So this blogger, just to recap, has essentially jumped in on behalf of Chrissy Teigen.
Right. So we got on the phone for 53 minutes, and most of the conversation was, you need to apologize to Chrissy Teigen. I said, I'm not apologizing to her. There's no reason to apologize to Chrissy Teigen. But what are you looking for? Are you looking for money? I was worried that how aggressive they were, and the looting was still approaching, and my main store, the value in that store is much greater than the store that got looted.
Right, so because she's publicly posted your store as being owned by a racist concern that they're gonna come loot you some more. Who was the check written out to?
Act Blue.
To Act Blue.
Right, which is BLM.
Black Lives Matter. So she was basically saying, if you make a donation to Black Lives Matter.
I'll take down the post.
Okay.
And then after she got off the conversation with me, she texted me from
I
a
like
phone
my
number.
hair too.
And if you don't make the donation, I'm going to repost this.
My
I'm gonna make
eyebrows look
another
weird
post, an
today, though,
unfortunate
don't
post,
they?
so it won't be good.
So let me ask you a question. Chrissy Teigen, Jen Atkin, a blogger in which they both follow. Why do you think they felt the need to get involved on such a level and to be so supportive of the looting?
Well, I think there was a, you know, a side that they felt that it would help them become relevant and heroes and everything.
Did Dana mention anything to you about Chrissy Teigen and her having a relationship?
Yes, she said Chrissy Teigen thanked me for what she did.
Wow.
Yeah.
So she thanked the blogger
Yes.
for calling you a racist.
Yes.
And I guess having an outrage
Yes.
mob
Yes.
descend on you online.
Yes.
My name is Charles and I grew up in Kenya.
How long have you lived in Minneapolis?
I came to Minneapolis in May of 1987, so it's been 27 years.
27 years. What was this city before the George Floyd riot?
Well, it was just a typical Midwestern city with low crime and hardworking people, and we just lived here and enjoyed life.
Yeah. And then things took a bit of a turn, and this is something different, would you say?
Well, what we saw was like a venting of anger. It was complete opposite of Minnesota nice. And we saw anger, mayhem, looting, destruction of property, burning of police precincts, and it was completely foreign to me. I'm used to something like this in third world countries, but not in America, and quite honestly, not in Minnesota.
Not in Minnesota. This is something that I think I've never seen before in any city that I've lived in, at least. It says, you are now entering the free state of George Floyd. What does that mean?
It means this is an autonomous zone, and it operates outside the laws of United States. And anything that happens here is run by a community, and they do whatever they want.
They do whatever they want. How is that allowed in the United States?
The city of Minneapolis has been negotiating.
Negotiating with whom?
With the community.
Wow. So the city is being held hostage by the community that is running the autonomous zone. Do I have that understood?
That's correct.
Wow. So we are now entering a state where really anything goes, right? Really sort of anything goes, right?
Well, I think anything goes here. We've seen death. We've seen a man shot right in front of us. We've seen a woman who was pregnant shot right in front of us. And right here, we had a huge bus, like a school bus, and it was a clinic. It was a medical clinic. And the number one thing they were treating during the time of the riots was gunshot wounds right here.
As I'm looking around, there's so many empty shops on the block, things that are boarded up. How does that make you feel to see that? Is there ever going to be life again on this street?
Well, I feel like there has been a tremendous loss of the way of life here has changed. The economy, the destruction of big businesses. Most of the businesses here that were destroyed, the insurance would not be able to cover that.
Right.
And so it's a hard thing for people to rebuild themselves, especially after what they went through.
It almost seems like a vigil is being kept here.
Well, this is pretty much the body of George Floyd. This is where he lay dead. Breathed his last right here.
Right. And so the idea is that no one should enter. This is sort of a sacred place. Is that correct?
Yeah, you can see this. It's pretty much a holy ground.
Now you're a pastor, so I just wanted to ask you, how does it make you feel, right? Knowing obviously who George Floyd was and how he lived his life, to see that this has been transformed into a holy ground, you know, as if this is where Jesus Christ took his last breath.
Well,
We have better people to follow. Of course, Jesus Christ, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who have lived their lives and epitomized what we would like to emulate.
Right, right. And how does it make you feel when you hear leaders, saying that the death of George Floyd is more significant than Martin Luther King?
It's outrageous.
It's outrageous, because it is.
I guess I would have assumed.
Republicans are Nazis. You cannot separate yourselves from the bad. Like,
Growing up, never thought much about race. It never really seemed to matter that much. At least not to me. Am I racist?
I would really appreciate it if you
I'm trying to learn. I'm on this journey. I'm gonna sort this out. I need to go deeper undercover.
Joining us now is Matt, certified DEI expert.
Here's my certification. What you're doing is you're stretching out of your whiteness. This is more for you, Ms. Chief. Is America inherently racist?
The word inherent is challenging there.
Want to rename the George Washington Monument to the George Floyd Monument?
America is racist to its bones.
So inherently.
Yeah, this country is a piece of
White.
folks,
White.
trash, white supremacy, white woman, white boy.
Is there a black person around here? What's a black person right here? Does he not exist? Roman?
Hi, what's your name?
I'm Matt.
I just had to ask who you are because you have to be careful.
Never been too careful.
They gonna say you racist.
Buy your tickets now. In theaters September 13th. Rated PG-13.
Well, folks, Kamala Harris is doing it. She's doing it. We are now on day 27 of answering 0 questions as the de facto Democratic nominee. And that is an amazing accomplishment in and of itself, that she's been able to go almost an entire month without answering a single adversarial question this entire time. Because her campaign is 2 things: free money and joy. Those are the things: free money, joy, and 0 questions whatsoever. She now says that she will commit to 2 presidential debates. Now, normally you have 3 presidential debates, but she is very huffy about having 3 presidential debates. The last thing she wants is that her positions be exposed before the American public as the communism light that they are, economically speaking, and the absolute sheer weakness and cowardice of her foreign policy. She doesn't want that exposed on stage, so she's going to minimize this as much as humanly possible. Yesterday, Team Harris said that they would have 3 debates total. They'd have 1 VP debate between Tim Walz and J.D. Vance. Makes sense, because the last thing they want is J.D. Vance just tearing Tim Walz a new one over and over and over. As we will see, Tim Walz is a horrible vice presidential pick. What they really don't want is a repeat performance of Kamala Harris in front of the public. See, it took many debate performances in 2019, 2020 for her to come completely apart, for the wheels to come off the Kamala Harris bus. And so what they're hoping is that the less you see of Kamala Harris, the more you will like her, which frankly is a good strategy, because the more you see of her, the more you dislike her. They put out a statement yesterday after Donald Trump had suggested that there'd be 3 presidential debates, just like normal, because the last candidate, died. So he has said, why don't we have 3 presidential debates? She said, no, won't do it. Quote, the debate about debates is over. I like that they can just declare this. They can just randomly declare that the debate about the debates is over. That doesn't have any totalitarian overtones. Donald Trump's campaign accepted our proposal for 3 debates, 2 presidential and a vice presidential debate. Assuming Donald Trump actually shows up on September 10th to debate Vice President Harris, Governor Walz will see J.D. Vance on October 1st, and the American people will have another opportunity to see the Vice President and Donald Trump on the debate stage in October. Now, what Democrats know is that they're going to ramp up the early voting as fast as humanly possible, and so by the time you hit October, half of their votes are already going to be in the can. Kamala Harris continues, voters deserve to see the candidates for the highest office in the land share their competing visions for the future. The more they play games, the more insecure and unserious Trump and Vance reveal themselves to be. To the American people, those games end now. I mean, the only campaign that's been playing games about the debates has been the Kamala Harris campaign, because Donald Trump made a commitment to Joe Biden, who is no one, which would be quite a feat, considering that Kamala Harris would be an obscure no-name California senator like Alex Padilla, if it were not for the fact that Joe Biden picked her up from the scrap heap of American politics and made her vice president on the basis of DEI qualifications. She is only famous because of Joe Biden.
Yes.
She's only a national figure because of Joe Biden.
Yep.
And by the way, from day one, he said this is the Biden-Harris White House. He said she was intimately involved in every decision. So she is tied at the hip to his policies, which is something that Joe Biden himself said. Peter Doocy asked him about it, and he said, she's not going to distance herself from my economic policies. By the way, he is right. The only economic policies she has are his.
How much does it bother you that Vice President Harris might soon, for political reasons, start to distance herself from your economic? She's not going to. You don't think he's going to?
She's not going to, but
He said she's not going to do it. He's very adamant. She's not going to do it. She's not going to do it. That's a problem for Kamala Harris because it turns out most people don't actually like her economic policies. In fact, recent polls showed 52% of Americans do not think America should move in the direction of California. And yet, the same polls are showing that 52% of Americans are going to vote for Kamala Harris. What's the disconnect? She's hiding her policies. She's hiding herself. Instead, she's smearing it over with a pastiche of joy. A pastiche of joy. We'll get to the joy component in just a moment. Biden, however, will not let this thing go. This is one of the big dangers for the Democrats is, again, the ghost of Joe Biden just hovering around the hallways of the Kamala Harris campaign, every so often jumping out of the closet. You go, whoa! In fact, a Fox News reporter said, yeah, Joe Biden was so concerned to let me know that he was connected with Kamala Harris that he grabbed my arm.
You know what they'll call the economy is going to continue with all those legislation passes working. In case you haven't noticed, it's working.
Yeah, he grabbed my arm in that answer. The president saying that the Vice President Kamala Harris will not distance herself from the current economic policies.
Now, the reality is that she's attempting to distance herself from Joe Biden while embracing even more communistic and socialistic policies. And she wants to have it both ways. She wants to both say that she was deeply embedded in Bidenomics and also she has no responsibility for Bidenomics. So yesterday, she had to do a very awkward rally with Joe Biden, and it was indeed an awkward rally. And Joe Biden was out there touting Bidenomics, which, of course, is wildly unpopular. But he was saying things that she can't dissociate with because she actually requires the same voters that Biden had in the bag. So here was Joe Biden rallying with Kamala Harris yesterday, saying everyone does better with more unions. I mean, if that were true, then there would be more than 7% of the workforce currently unionized in the private sector. It is eminently untrue. In fact, everyone does significantly worse with large-scale unions. In the United States, consumers get absolutely screwed. Industries turn into zombie industries subsidized by the federal government. This is the story of the car industry in the 1960s and 70s in the United States. But here is Joe Biden trying to make sure that he's got those union voters in the bag for Kamala Harris.
There's more we can do for everyone. We can't give up. They told me every major piece of legislation we passed to give us the strongest economy in history and the best economy in the world. We got more to do for working people. By the way, everybody does better when there's more unions.
That is eminently untrue. As any business person will tell you, that is not true. Sometimes unions are good. The vast majority of the time, unions make demands that actually bankrupt the businesses they're supposed to be negotiating with. Meanwhile, Kamala Harris was campaigning with Joe Biden and more.